Welcome to this brief training video on getting hands-on with Aerospike. In this tutorial, we will first download and install Vagrant and VirtualBox on your local machine, and then set up and start Aerospike as well as the Aerospike Monitoring Console server. We will monitor the Aerospike cluster using AMC and then interact with it with Aerospike using the Aerospike Query Language tool, or AQL, which can be used to insert individual records and also explore the state of the database. We will then look into the Java benchmark tool. We'll build the Java client, and the benchmark tool is built along with it, and use it to load simulated data that you can throw at the server to see its performance. After that, we will look into the sample Java applications that are packaged with the Java client and go through some read-write operations using a Java client application. Let's get started by installing Vagrant on your local machine. On your browser, go to www.aerospike.com/docs and click on this red download Aerospike box. It should take you to the aerospike.com download server and the version page. Once you're on this download page, select the desktop of choice, say MacOS or Windows, or if you're using a Linux machine, look for the links for the Linux machine and click on install. And that will take you to the install on OX page. But before we proceed on installing on OX, we do need to install Vagrant. So click on that using Vagrant link that I've shown in red. And when you click on that link, you will end up on this page where you want to look at install Vagrant and install VirtualBox instructions. So follow those to download and install Vagrant and download and install VirtualBox. Once you have done that, come back to the previous page and we are ready to install Aerospike server. So now that you have Vagrant and VirtualBox installed, let's go back to the install on OX page and install our Aerospike server. So navigate back to the Mac OS install page, open a terminal on your Mac machine, and in your home directory, create a subdirectory aerospike-vm and change to it. Once you are inside aerospike-vm subdirectory, use vagrant init aerospike/aerospike-ce command to download the Aerospike image from the cloud. Now that we have successfully installed the Aerospike image, let's use the following commands to run Aerospike inside the VirtualBox. Vagrant up will start the virtual machine. Vagrant SSH will log you inside the virtual machine, so you can then access the Aerospike server and its tools, including the AMC server. Then you can log out of that virtual machine, which will get you out of the virtual machine. And finally, Vagrant halt will halt the process, so you can go back to doing other things on your MacBook. A quick video walkthrough of what we just discussed. I'm at aerospike.com/docs. I'm clicking on download Aerospike, which should take me to the next page, which is download, install, etc. I'm going to scroll down, and if I'm using any Linux desktop, I can use any one of these. Otherwise, I'm going to do for Mac OS. I'll go to the install link, which brings me here, and using Vagrant. And this is how I would download and install Vagrant first. So I'll go through the process of installing for the correct operating system. In this case, it's Mac. And I'm going to skip it because I've already installed it. Going back to my window, then I'll go and install VirtualBox and go ahead and pick the host and install it. So once you have done that, you're back here and navigate back to our page of installing on OS X, and I am at the create directory as well as downloading and initializing the virtual machine, for which I will then show you how to work through a terminal. So here I am in my terminal window, and the first thing I will do in my home directory is make the Aerospike-VM subdirectory, change to it, and then go ahead and do a Vagrant init Aerospike-ce, and it'll work. And go ahead it'll ask me to do the installation by invoking Vagrant up. So here we go, do Vagrant up, and it's going to import everything. So while we wait, it's installing the latest version of the Community Edition. Takes a bit, and when it is ready, I should be able to go inside the virtual machine using Vagrant SSH. So all I have to do is Vagrant SSH, and that should take me in, and here I am. So I can check on my Aerospike service, should be running, and let's see if the AMC service is running, and that is running. So now I have both Aerospike and AMC running, and at this point all I need to do is figure out the IP address at which I can come through the browser and see what my AMC is serving at. So let's do that. So now I'm going to follow the directions to get the IP address at which AMC is serving the dashboard. So we're already inside Vagrant SSH, so I can just run the IP address command and grep for global ETH1. So I can just do IP address grep global ETH, and that gives me the IP address at which AMC is running to the outside world. So that'll be that address, which means I can take that address, go in my browser, open a new window, go to that IP address and go to port 8081, and it will open up the dashboard. And over here, since the AMC server is running on the same IP address as the Aerospike server, we can just type localhost and it will connect, and voila, we have our view of our Aerospike machine that is running. It has 2 GB of RAM, 5 GB of disk defined, and if we scroll down, we should be able to see the namespaces defined. It has a single namespace called test. Currently it has no records, masters or replicas, and that's the further details on the namespace. It's using disk 5 GB and RAM 2 GB. Let's take a quick look into the Aerospike Query Language, or the AQL tool. So while still inside our Vagrant SSH shell, let's look at the first tool, the Aerospike Query Language, to see if we can insert a record into Aerospike. So currently we see we have 0 master records or replica records in our node, our single node cluster. So let's invoke AQL by typing AQL and gives the AQL prompt, and then we can insert data into our test namespace, and let's call the set name as test set. We use the AQL keyword PK to specify the primary key, and then name is the name of a bin that I'm using. So we'll give it the values. Let's call our primary key as K1 and name as Jack. So this will insert one record at key K1 in the name bin with the value Jack. So let's see if we actually have that record. And if you want the output, so that's the name of the bin is name in JSON format, you can do the same, and you can use the up arrow key to pull the last command, and we see that's our output. We can also say set record print metadata to true, and then if we look at our record, we get all sorts of information about which set it belongs to and how much time it has to live, the generation of the record. So if I update this record, the generation of the record would update. So if from Jack, if I went to Jill as the name, and now I pulled up the same record, I'll see its generation has increased to 2. So AQL is a tool to essentially explore your database and do some preliminary inserts and deletes, etc. There are a whole bunch of commands that if you type help, it throws everything at you, and then you can scroll through all the commands that you want to exercise. But some of the ones like show namespaces will tell you all the namespaces that we have right now. We just have namespace test. Let me set the output back to table and show sets. So that tells you I just have one test set and it has got one object in it. Okay. So that's once I insert this object, you see on AMC also I see one master object. Since it's a single node cluster, I don't see any replicas. So by default, the replication factor becomes 1. So that's a quick tour into AQL. Some of the things you can do with AQL is build secondary indexes. So you have the create index command in AQL that will let you build secondary indexes on multi-bin records on one of the bins of a multi-bin record. You can also do security management in terms of creating users and roles and all that. So, and of course, user-defined functions you can manage through AQL. So again, help in AQL will guide you through that. While AQL is handy to insert a few records, if you wanted to insert, let's say, 100,000 records and monitor the latency performance, and the 100,000 records would be some representative form of records that mimics your real data, then the Java benchmark tool is a handy option. Let's exit out of AQL and let's explore the Java benchmark tool. So if you see, we have this client install directory, and let's see what we have in there. We have the Java client and other clients. So let's just run the Java client install, and this will install, unpack the Java client library and install everything. So let us run through that. So while that is running, inside the Java client library, we'll see the benchmarks subdirectory, which will have our benchmark tool that we are interested in. So we're almost done here. And so see, we had build success and now it's building the benchmark tool. And it tells you an example of running this benchmark right here. So let's just go ahead and execute right here this example, cd to this directory, and let's run this benchmark tool, which is inserting say 1,000,000 records. And I would just go ahead and instead of 1,000,000, let's try just say 100,000 maybe. So that's 100,000 records, and starting with key 1, and the object spec is string of 50 bytes, and it's a read update workload, so 10% read and 90% update. So instead, if you want to do an insert, you can do a work load of I, which will insert, but since update will also insert, we can try this. So we run this, and you can see on AMC now, data will be coming in. If we look at our reads and writes, so the light blue reads are the failed reads because we probably didn't have the records to read over there when we just started, because we started with the update tool instead of an insert mode. And now as the data has been inserted, you can see that the read rate is about 3,500 transactions per second, while the write rate is about 35,000. So that's the 90% updates and 10% writes. And this tool will keep running continuously till we control C out of it. Let's look at our total number of records in the meantime. So we have about 100,000 records that we inserted, and the one record from our AQL test. And that tells you our disk usage and the memory usage. And these are our high water marks. We are well below our high water marks. This is for RAM, and that's for disk, and that's our stop writes mark for RAM. And our usage is very much down in the mud here with 100,000 records. So let's go back to our tool and go ahead and control C out of it. So that's a quick insight into our benchmark tool. Finally, let's explore some examples built with the Java client. After we had finished building our Java client and we saw our build complete, there's a little printout that tells you what you can do to further try all the Java client examples. And they all reside in a subdirectory inside the examples subdirectory. So let me first go and show you where the example code is, and then we'll run one of these examples using the executable. So this is where all your examples reside, in this directory, source com Aerospike examples, and here's a whole bunch of code examples in Java. The main action begins with this class example.java. So this is where the first initial connection is made. So let's just take a quick look at this class, and if you see, In this class, we start with creating our basic connection object. So we supply a list of hosts to connect to the cluster, and then instantiate the client object with the client connection policy and one of the hosts. So in this case, we're just running it with the local host, and then as an argument we give it a class name, and that's the example we run. So that's exactly what this code does. So let's go up and maybe run this put get code, which will essentially put a record and get a record. And you can browse through the code, but let me quickly show you how to run these examples by going to the example subdirectory and running the executable, which is run examples. And let's run the put get class. So let's see what that does. So this will first invoke the example, create the connection, and then go ahead and run this class, whatever that does. And so here you go. It begins. It puts a record in namespace test. Set is demo set. Key is put get key. Bin1 is bin1 and value is 1. Bin2 is bin2 and value is 2. So let's go to AQL, and if we now say show sets, we'll see we've got our demo set. So let's see, select star from test.demo set. And guess what? We see the bin1 and bin2 with value 1 and value 2. Okay, so that's what we just did with the put example. And then the get example takes the same key and actually retrieves the values of bin1 and bin2. Okay, or it's actually pulling specific bins here. Okay, so that's a put get example, and you can, like I said, all sorts of examples are available in Java for you to explore right here. The full gamut of available operations in the Java client. You can see quick examples to get you started. I hope you enjoyed this quick tour of a hands-on session with Aerospike, and you will pick a language of your choice and explore the full functionality of our clients further. Thank you.